Sarah Mitchell stepped off the school bus, her worn boots hitting the pavement with a soft thud. The city high school loomed before her like a concrete monster, all glass and steel. Nothing like the small wooden schoolhouse she'd attended back in rural Montana. Her twin sister Emma walked beside her, both girls clutching their backpacks tightly as they navigated through crowds of students who looked like they'd stepped out of magazine covers. The sisters were identical in appearance, but worlds apart in personality. Both had long auburn hair and green eyes that sparkled with intelligence, but where Emma was gentle and soft-spoken, Sarah carried herself with a quiet confidence that most people mistook for shyness. What nobody knew was that Sarah had spent the last 4 years in military training that would make grown men weep. "Look at these country bumpkins," sneered Jessica Reynolds, the queen bee of Jefferson High. She stood with her group of followers near the main entrance, designer clothes and perfect makeup making her look like she belonged on a reality show. Did they come here straight from milking cows? Emma's cheeks flushed red and she lowered her head, but Sarah simply observed. She'd learned long ago to assess threats before responding. Jessica was tall, probably 5'8", with bleached blonde hair and the kind of confidence that came from never being challenged. Her followers were typical high school sheep, desperate to stay in their leader's good graces. "I heard their family had to move here because their farm failed," whispered another girl loudly enough for everyone to hear. "Probably can't even afford decent clothes." Sarah glanced down at her simple jeans and flannel shirt. They were clean and functional, exactly what she preferred. In the field, fancy clothes meant death. Here they apparently meant social survival. The harassment continued throughout the morning. Someone accidentally spilled juice on Emma's notebook during chemistry class. Another student knocked Sarah's books out of her hands in the hallway, scattering papers everywhere. By lunch, Emma was fighting back tears. "Why are they being so mean?" Emma whispered as they sat alone at a corner table in the cafeteria. "We haven't done anything to them." Sarah chewed her sandwich methodically, watching Jessica's table across the room. The blonde was holding court, gesturing dramatically while her friends hung on every word. Sarah could read body language like others read books, and what she saw was a predator who had found new prey. "Some people need to put others down to feel important," Sarah said simply. "It says more about them than us." But inside, Sarah was making calculations. She'd dealt with enemies before, but those had been armed combatants in hostile territory. High school bullies were a different species entirely, operating by different rules. Her training had taught her that every enemy had weaknesses, every situation had multiple solutions, and patience was often the most powerful weapon. After lunch, things escalated. Jessica and her crew cornered Emma in the bathroom, surrounding her like a pack of wolves. "Did you see how she raised her hand in English class?" Jessica laughed cruelly, acting like she knows something about literature. "Probably never read anything but farming magazines. Please just leave me alone," Emma said quietly, trying to push past them to reach the door. "Oh, she wants us to leave her alone," mocked Jessica. "What are you going to do if we don't? Call your sister? I bet she's just as pathetic as you are." That's when Sarah walked in. She'd been tracking Emma's movements since lunch, a habit ingrained by years of watching her team's backs in dangerous situations. The bathroom fell silent as Sarah assessed the situation with calm, calculating eyes. "Emma," Sarah said quietly. "Time to go." Jessica stepped forward, clearly not intimidating by Sarah's calm demeanor. "Oh, look, here comes the cavalry. What are you going to do, country girl? Fight all of us?" Sarah smiled, the kind of smile that never reached her eyes. "I don't fight children." The insult hit its mark. Jessica's face flushed red with anger. "Children? You're the same age as us, you freak." "Age and maturity aren't the same thing," Sarah replied, gently guiding Emma toward the door. "Emma, let's go," but Jessica wasn't done. She grabbed Emma's arm roughly, her nails digging into the soft skin. "I wasn't finished talking to your sister." Sarah's demeanor shifted so subtly that most people wouldn't have noticed, but Emma felt the change immediately. It was like standing next to a sleeping predator that had just opened its eyes. "Let go of her arm," Sarah said, her voice dropping to barely above a whisper. "Or what?" Jessica challenged, tightening her grip. Sarah looked at Jessica's hand on Emma's arm, then at Jessica's face. "You really don't want to find out." There was something in Sarah's tone that made Jessica's friends take a step back. Even Jessica felt a chill run down her spine, though she couldn't explain why. This wasn't the reaction she was used to getting from her victims. "Whatever," Jessica said, releasing Emma's arm but trying to save face. "Come on, girls. We have better things to do than waste time with these losers." As they left, Jessica threw one final barb over her shoulder. "This isn't over, farm girls. I own this school, and by the time I'm done with you, you'll wish you'd never left whatever hole you crawled out of." Sarah helped Emma clean up in silence, noting the finger-shaped bruises already forming on her sister's arm. Emma was tough in her own way, but she wasn't built for this kind of warfare. Sarah, however, was built for much worse. That evening, in their small apartment, Emma finally broke down. "I hate it here," she sobbed. "I want to go home. Why did Dad have to take that job here? Why couldn't we just stay on the ranch?" Sarah held her sister while she cried, but her mind was already working. She thought about her real training, the classified missions she could never discuss, the skills she'd developed in places that didn't appear on any map. Jessica Reynolds thought she was dealing with an easy target, a simple country girl who would crumble under pressure. She had no idea that Sarah Mitchell had been forged in fires that would reduce Jessica's worst nightmares to minor inconveniences. The bullying had just begun, but so had Sarah's counter-strategy. And in this war, Jessica had no idea what she was really up against. Sarah stared out the window at the city lights, already planning her next moves. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but she was ready. After all, she'd been trained by the best military force in the world to handle much more dangerous enemies than a spoiled high school queen bee. The real question wasn't what a country girl could do. The question was what Jessica and her followers were going to do when they realized they'd picked the wrong fight. The next morning, Sarah woke at 5:30, just like she had every day for the past 4 years. While Emma slept peacefully in the next bed, Sarah slipped into workout clothes and began her daily routine. Push-ups, sit-ups, stretches, and meditation. Her body moved with practiced precision, muscle memory taking over as her mind planned the day ahead. Their apartment was small but clean, located on the 3rd floor of an old building downtown. Their father, Colonel James Mitchell, had taken a position at the nearby military base, necessitating their move from the family ranch. What Emma didn't know was that their father's new job was connected to Sarah's own military service, a fact that had to remain classified. Sarah finished her workout and started breakfast, the domestic task feeling strange after years of field rations and mission briefings. She made pancakes from scratch, the way their grandmother had taught them back on the ranch. The familiar ritual helped ground her in this new civilian reality. "Smells amazing," Emma said sleepily, shuffling into the kitchen in her pajamas. The bruises on her arm were darker now, purple fingerprints that made Sarah's jaw tighten slightly. "How's your arm?" Sarah asked, flipping pancakes with practiced efficiency. Emma rubbed the bruises absently. "It's fine. I bruise easily, you know that." Sarah did know that. She also knew that Jessica Reynolds had crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. In Sarah's world, putting hands on a team member was an act of war. At school, the harassment resumed immediately. Someone had taped a crude sign to Emma's locker reading "Cowgirl," with unflattering drawings. Emma's face crumpled when she saw it. But before she could react, Sarah calmly peeled off the tape and crumpled the paper. "It's just paper," Sarah said quietly. "Their words can't hurt you unless you let them." But Sarah memorized the handwriting. Details mattered in any operation. During first period English, Mrs. Rodriguez assigned a group project on American literature. Sarah watched as Jessica deliberately chose her team to exclude both Mitchell sisters, leaving them to work together while making loud comments about charity cases and dead weight. "I guess we'll have to carry the farm girls," Jessica announced to her group. "Hope they can at least read the books." Sarah pulled out her notebook and began writing. Her analysis of The Great Gatsby was sharp and insightful, drawing on themes of class warfare and social mobility that she understood better than most. She'd seen real inequality in the countries where she'd served, real poverty that made Jessica's privilege complaints seem like theater. Emma struggled with confidence but had genuinely brilliant ideas when she felt safe enough to share them. Sarah made sure to highlight her sister's contributions, building her up while mentally cataloging every slight from their classmates. At lunch, Jessica's campaign intensified. She'd recruited more followers, spreading rumors that the Mitchell sisters were on welfare, that their father was unemployed, that they'd brought diseases from their farm. The lies grew more elaborate and cruel with each telling. I heard they lived in a barn, one girl whispered loudly. Like, actually, with the animals. That explains the smell, another added, causing a wave of laughter. Emma's appetite disappeared. She pushed her food around her plate while tears threatened to spill. Sarah ate methodically, using the time to observe and plan. She noticed who laughed at the jokes, who looked uncomfortable, who seemed to be followers versus true believers in Jessica's campaign. The afternoon brought a new low. During gym class, someone had hidden Emma's clothes while she showered. Emma emerged from the shower stall to find her locker empty except for a note. Maybe you should just stay dirty like the pig you are. Sarah found Emma crying in a bathroom stall, wrapped in a gym towel, too humiliated to face the other students. Sarah's control cracked slightly as she looked at her sister's tear-streaked face. The protective instinct that had kept her team alive in hostile territory surged to the surface. I can't do this anymore, Emma sobbed. I want to go home. I want to call Dad and tell him we can't stay here. Sarah knelt beside her sister, calculating rapidly. Their father couldn't know about the bullying. His new position was too important, too classified. If he knew his daughters were struggling, he might make decisions that could compromise national security. Sarah had seen the files in their father's office, understood the stakes involved. Listen to me, Sarah said firmly, taking Emma's hands. These people are nothing. They're children playing games they don't understand, but you're stronger than they are. I don't feel strong, Emma whispered. Strength isn't about feeling strong, Sarah replied. It's about doing what needs to be done even when you're scared. And Emma, you're the bravest person I know. Sarah found Emma's stolen clothes in Jessica's locker, retrieving them with a lock-picking skill learned in advanced tactical training. She helped her sister dress and walked her to their next class, her mind working on multiple levels. That evening, Sarah made a phone call from the apartment's landline while Emma did homework. The number she dialed wasn't in any phone book. This is Mitchell, she said quietly when the call connected. I need information on Jessica Reynolds, 17 Jefferson High School. Parents' financial records, social media activity, any legal issues, standard background check. The voice on the other end was crisp and professional. Timeline? 24 hours, acknowledged. Package will be delivered through normal channels. Sarah hung up and returned to her homework, acting as if she'd just called a pizza place instead of activating military intelligence resources. Some problems required conventional solutions. Others required the full weight of the United States military intelligence apparatus. The next day brought a surprise. Emma walked into school with her head held higher, her shoulders straight. She'd spent the evening talking with Sarah about confidence and inner strength. And something had shifted in her demeanor. Look who's trying to pretend she belongs here, Jessica sneered during passing period. New clothes won't change what you are, farm girl. But this time Emma looked Jessica directly in the eyes. I know exactly what I am, she said clearly. The question is, do you? Jessica was momentarily taken aback by Emma's newfound confidence, but she recovered quickly. What's that supposed to mean, freak? Sarah stepped up beside her sister, her presence subtle but unmistakable. It means she's not afraid of you anymore. Oh, really? Jessica's voice rose, attracting attention from other students. We'll see about that. Nobody disrespects me in my school. Sarah smiled that same cold smile from the day before. Your school? That's right. My family built half this town. My mother's on the school board. My father owns the biggest law firm in the county. I own this place and everyone in it. Sarah nodded thoughtfully. That's good information to have. Something in Sarah's tone made Jessica pause. There was a confidence there that didn't match the simple country girl facade. It was the confidence of someone who had faced real danger and emerged victorious. After school, Sarah found a package in their mailbox. No return address, just her name written in block letters. Inside was a comprehensive dossier on Jessica Reynolds and her family. Financial records, legal documents, police reports, social media archives, even medical records from private databases. Sarah read through everything methodically. Jessica's father had been investigated twice for tax evasion but never charged. The family had significant debts hidden behind shell companies. Jessica herself had been arrested for shoplifting at 14, but the charges were dropped thanks to family connections. Most interesting was a series of sealed juvenile court records that suggested a pattern of escalating behavior. But Sarah wasn't looking for ammunition for blackmail. She was looking for pressure points, understanding the enemy's psychology and motivations. Jessica was a product of privilege and entitlement, but she was also insecure beneath the surface, desperate to maintain her position through control and intimidation. Sarah tucked the file away and started dinner. Emma chatted about her day, mentioning how she'd actually enjoyed her history class and made a tentative friend in chemistry lab. The bullying was still happening, but Emma was building resilience. That night, Sarah lay awake making plans. Tomorrow would mark 1 week since their arrival at Jefferson High. Jessica's campaign against them was escalating, but she had no idea that her targets were already fighting back using resources and skills she couldn't comprehend. Sarah thought about her training instructors, the lessons learned in simulated combat, the real missions where failure meant death. They'd always taught her that the best victories were won before the enemy even realized they were fighting a war. Jessica Reynolds thought she was playing high school games. Sarah Mitchell was playing for keeps, with the full backing of the most sophisticated intelligence network in the world. The country girl was about to show the city what real power looked like. The turning point came on a rainy Thursday morning when Jessica Reynolds made her biggest mistake. She'd recruited Tyler Morrison, a senior linebacker who'd been held back twice to help escalate her campaign against the Mitchell sisters. Tyler was 6'4", 250 pounds of entitled athlete who'd never been told no by anyone who mattered. Sarah noticed him following Emma between classes, staying just far enough back to avoid teacher attention but close enough to be threatening. Emma hadn't seen him yet, but Sarah's peripheral vision caught everything. Her training had taught her to track multiple potential threats simultaneously while maintaining normal behavior patterns. During lunch, Tyler made his move. Emma was walking to the library, books clutched against her chest, when he stepped out from behind a pillar and deliberately bumped into her. Her books went flying, papers scattering across the wet floor of the corridor. "Oops," Tyler said with a nasty grin. "Guess country girls don't know how to walk in the big city." Emma knelt to gather her soggy papers, her face burning with embarrassment. A few students had stopped to watch, some pulling out phones to record what they assumed would be entertaining humiliation. "Maybe you should watch where you're going. Farm girl," Tyler continued, deliberately stepping on one of her notebooks as she reached for it. "This isn't some dirt road where you can wander around like cattle." That's when Sarah appeared. She moved through the crowd of students like smoke, her approach so quiet that Tyler didn't notice her until she spoke. "Move your foot," Sarah said simply. Tyler looked down, surprised to see the quiet Mitchell sister standing beside him. He was nearly a foot taller than Sarah and outweighed her by over 100 pounds. The idea that she might challenge him was so absurd he laughed out loud. "What did you say to me, little girl?" Sarah's voice remained perfectly calm. "I said move your foot off my sister's notebook." The crowd grew larger, sensing drama. Someone whispered, "Fight," and more students pressed closer, their phones ready to capture whatever happened next. Tyler grinned wider, playing to his audience. "And what if I don't? What are you going to do about it, country mouse?" Sarah looked up at him with those calm green eyes, doing rapid calculations. Tyler was big but sloppy, all bulk and no technique. His stance was wrong, his balance poor, his hands loose at his sides. He was used to intimidating people with size alone, which meant he'd never learned to actually fight. "I'm going to ask you one more time," Sarah said quietly. "Move your foot." Tyler laughed again and ground his heel down harder on the notebook, tearing the cover. "Make me." What happened next took less than 3 seconds, but to the watching students it seemed like magic. Sarah moved with fluid precision, her body becoming a weapon honed by years of training that made Tyler's football skills look like children's games. She stepped forward and slightly to the side, her right hand moving up to Tyler's left wrist while her left hand found pressure points along his forearm. Her foot hooked behind his ankle as she applied leverage in a way that turned his size against him. Tyler's triumphant expression changed to confusion, then pain, then genuine fear as he found himself falling backwards with Sarah controlling his descent. He hit the floor hard, Sarah's grip on his wrist keeping his arm extended in a position that would dislocate his shoulder if he moved wrong. The entire maneuver had been silent except for Tyler's grunt of surprise and the thud of his body hitting the linoleum. The corridor fell completely silent. Tyler, the feared linebacker who'd never lost a fight, was flat on his back with a girl half his size controlling his every movement through what looked like a simple wrist hold. "The notebook," Sarah said calmly, still maintaining the lock that kept Tyler immobilized. Tyler's free hand frantically moved his foot off Emma's notebook. his face red with pain and humiliation. Sarah held the position for another moment, letting every watching student understand exactly what they'd witnessed, then smoothly released him and stepped back. Tyler scrambled to his feet, rubbing his wrist and shoulder, his eyes wide with shock. He opened his mouth to say something, probably a threat or an insult, but Sarah's expression stopped him cold. There was something in her eyes that spoke of capabilities far beyond what he'd just experienced, a warning that pushing further would lead to consequences he couldn't imagine. "Walk away, Tyler," Sarah said quietly, "while you still can." Tyler looked around at the crowd of students, all holding phones, all having witnessed his complete humiliation at the hands of a country girl who barely came up to his shoulders. His reputation as the school's tough guy had just been destroyed in front of everyone. He walked away without another word. Emma stared at her sister in amazement as she helped gather the scattered books. "Sarah, how did you do that?" "Leverage," Sarah replied simply, as if she'd just solved a math problem instead of taking down someone twice her size. "Physics and anatomy." But the watching students heard something different in that casual explanation. They heard competence, training, and a suggestion that what they'd just seen was barely a fraction of what Sarah Mitchell was capable of. The whispers started immediately. Within an hour, the story had spread through the entire school, growing in the telling. Sarah had destroyed Tyler Morrison without breaking a sweat, without raising her voice, without even looking particularly concerned about it. The girl they'd been dismissing as a simple farm kid was clearly something else entirely. Jessica Reynolds heard about the incident during 6th period chemistry. Her face went white as her followers described what had happened, their voices mixing awe with fear. "She just took him down like he was nothing," Amy Chen said excitedly. "Tyler couldn't even move. It was like she knew some kind of martial arts or something. Maybe she's in karate classes," suggested another girl. But Jessica was thinking harder than that. She'd grown up in a military town, had dated boys whose fathers were soldiers. She recognized the signs of real training when she saw them. Sarah Mitchell wasn't learning moves from YouTube videos or weekend self-defense classes. Her technique had been too smooth, too professional, too automatic. After school, Jessica cornered her boyfriend Brad Henley by the gym. Brad was student body president, captain of the debate team, and generally considered one of the smartest students at Jefferson High. "I need you to find out everything you can about Sarah Mitchell," Jessica said urgently. Brad looked confused. "Why? I thought you were just messing with them because they're new." "This isn't messing around anymore," Jessica replied. "Did you see what she did to Tyler? That wasn't normal. People don't just know how to do that." Brad shrugged. "Maybe she took some self-defense classes growing up on a farm. Lots of rural girls learn to protect themselves." "No," Jessica said firmly. "This was different. I want to know where they came from, what their father does, why they really moved here. Something doesn't add up." That evening, Jessica sat in her room with her laptop using resources her father had taught her to access. Being the daughter of the town's most prominent lawyer had advantages when it came to information gathering. She started with public records, looking for property transactions, school transfers, anything that might explain the Mitchell family's background. What she found was frustrating in its normalcy. James Mitchell had indeed owned a ranch in Montana. There were records of financial difficulties, bank loans, eventually foreclosure. The family had moved to town when he took a position at the local military base. Everything seemed to check out, but Jessica's instincts were screaming that something was wrong. She'd built her social dominance on reading people, understanding their weaknesses and motivations. Emma Mitchell was exactly what she appeared to be, a sweet, sheltered country girl overwhelmed by city life. But Sarah was different. Sarah watched everything, said little, and moved with a confidence that seemed completely at odds with her supposed background. And then there was what had happened to Tyler. Jessica had seen the video someone had posted online. She'd watched it frame by frame, studying Sarah's movements, her expression, her body language. The girl had disabled a trained athlete twice her size with the casual efficiency of a professional. Jessica picked up her phone and called her father's office. Richard Reynolds worked late most nights, and she knew he'd still be there. "Dad, it's me. I need you to look into someone for me. Really look into them. I think there's something going on that we need to know about." Her father's voice was tired but alert. "What kind of something, sweetheart?" "The kind that could be dangerous if we're not careful." There was a pause. Richard Reynolds hadn't built the most successful law practice in the county by ignoring his daughter's intuition. Jessica had inherited his ability to read people and situations, and when she was genuinely concerned about something, he listened. "Give me the details," he said. As Jessica explained about the Mitchell sisters and what had happened at school, her father began taking notes. He had connections throughout the county, relationships with law enforcement, military contractors, and federal agencies. If there were secrets in the Mitchell family's background, he would find them. Meanwhile, across town, Sarah was helping Emma with her homework while mentally reviewing the day's events. She'd been forced to reveal more of her capabilities than she'd intended, but Tyler's escalation had left her no choice. Emma's safety came first, always. Her phone buzzed with a text message from an encrypted number. Situation acknowledged. Additional resources being prepared. Maintain cover, but authorize necessary measures for family protection. Sarah deleted the message and continued helping Emma with algebra, acting as if she'd just received a text from a friend, instead of authorization from Delta Force Command to use whatever means necessary to protect her mission and her family. The war between Jessica Reynolds and Sarah Mitchell was about to escalate beyond high school drama into something that would involve federal resources and national security interests. Jessica had no idea that her investigation into the quiet country girl would trigger responses from the highest levels of military intelligence. But she was about to find out what happened when civilians tried to dig into the background of someone whose very existence was classified. At the highest levels of government, Richard Reynolds spent 3 days trying to uncover the truth about the Mitchell family, using every resource at his disposal. What he found made him increasingly uncomfortable. Official records showed a straightforward story. James Mitchell, former ranch owner, now employed at the local military base in logistics. 2 daughters, Sarah and Emma, excellent students with clean disciplinary records from their previous school. But there were gaps. Unexplained periods where the family seemed to disappear from all public records. Medical records that were partially sealed. Financial transactions that didn't quite add up. And when he tried to dig deeper into James Mitchell's military position, he hit walls that no civilian lawyer should encounter. "Something's not right here, Jess," he told his daughter over dinner on Sunday night. "Every time I try to get detailed information about this family, I run into classification levels that shouldn't exist for a simple logistics coordinator." Jessica pushed her food around her plate, her mind racing. What does that mean? It means either James Mitchell isn't who he appears to be, or his daughters aren't, or both. Richard Reynolds had built his career on understanding when people were hiding something. The kind of security clearances I'm running into suggest intelligence work, black operations, things that don't officially exist. Jessica felt a chill run down her spine. "Are you saying Sarah Mitchell might be some kind of spy?" "I'm saying that girl who took down Tyler Morrison in 3 seconds flat isn't just a country kid who learned self-defense on a ranch." Her father leaned back in his chair, his expression serious. "Jess, I think you need to be very careful here. If I'm right about this family, they have resources and backing that could make our lives very difficult." But Jessica Reynolds had never backed down from a challenge in her life. Her father's warnings only confirmed what she'd suspected. Sarah Mitchell was hiding something significant, and Jessica had built her reputation on exposing other people's secrets. Monday morning brought a new strategy. Instead of direct confrontation, Jessica shifted to psychological warfare. She began spreading rumors that were just subtle enough to be believable. Sarah and Emma weren't really twins. They were government plants sent to spy on students. Their father was involved in some kind of witness protection program. The family had connections to dangerous people. Most students dismissed the rumors as Jessica's usual drama, but some began to look at the Mitchell sisters differently. Whispers followed them through the halls, and Emma noticed the change immediately. "People are staring at us more than usual," Emma said nervously as they walked to their lockers. And not in a good way. Sarah had noticed too. Jessica was adapting her tactics, which showed intelligence and strategic thinking. But she was also moving into territory that could trigger responses Jessica wasn't prepared for. That afternoon, Sarah received another encrypted message during study hall. Opposition conducting unauthorized background investigation. Local surveillance assets detecting increased interest in family unit. Request permission to activate countermeasures. Sarah looked around the quiet library where she was supposedly researching a history project. Emma sat at a nearby table, completely absorbed in her chemistry notes, unaware that federal agents were monitoring their situation and waiting for Sarah's response. Sarah typed back carefully. Negative on active countermeasures. Maintain observation protocols. Will handle through conventional channels. She deleted the conversation and returned to her textbook on World War II, while mentally composing a different kind of response to Jessica's escalation. Wednesday brought Jessica's next move. She'd convinced her father to use his connections, to have the school security system updated, which meant additional cameras and monitoring equipment that would record everything the Mitchell sisters did on campus. She also arranged for a substitute teacher in Sarah's AP history class, someone who could ask questions about the family's background as part of a getting to know new students exercise. Sarah recognized the substitute immediately. Mrs. Patricia, Vance had been asking too many specific questions, probing for details about their previous home, their father's work, their reasons for moving. Sarah answered politely but revealed nothing useful, while noting that Mrs. Vance was wearing an earpiece and had the posture of someone with law enforcement training. After class, Sarah made a decision. She walked directly to Principal Morrison's office and requested a meeting. "Mrs. Morrison," Sarah said, settling into the chair across from the principal's desk, "I think we need to discuss Jessica Reynolds' behavior toward my sister and me." Principal Morrison looked uncomfortable. She was Tyler's aunt, and had been under pressure from both Jessica's family and her own to handle the Mitchell situation quietly. "I understand there have been some adjustment challenges with your transition to our school. There have been deliberate attempts to harass and intimidate my sister, culminating in physical assault by your nephew," Sarah replied calmly. "I've documented everything and I think it's time we addressed this officially." Sarah pulled out a folder that made Principal Morrison's eyes widen. Inside were photographs of Emma's bruises, screenshots of social media posts, printed emails, and detailed written accounts of every incident since their arrival. The documentation was thorough, professional, and legally bulletproof. "I didn't realize the situation was this extensive," Principal Morrison said weakly. "There's more," Sarah continued. "Someone has been conducting unauthorized investigations into my family's background, using school resources and personnel for what appears to be harassment purposes. I have reason to believe this extends beyond normal student behavior into areas that could involve legal liability for the school district." Principal Morrison was quiet for a long moment, studying the documentation. She'd been a school administrator for 20 years and had never seen such thorough record-keeping from a student. "What exactly are you requesting?" "I want the harassment to stop," Sarah said simply. "I want my sister to be able to attend school safely. And I want the people responsible to understand that further escalation will have consequences they won't enjoy." "Are you threatening other students, Miss Mitchell?" Sarah smiled, that same cold smile that had become her trademark. "I'm not threatening anyone, Mrs. Morrison. I'm simply pointing out that actions have consequences, and some consequences extend far beyond high school discipline policies." That evening, Principal Morrison called an emergency meeting with Jessica's parents and Tyler's parents. She laid out Sarah's documentation, explained the legal liability the school was facing, and made it clear that the harassment needed to stop immediately. Richard Reynolds studied the photographs and written accounts with a lawyer's eye for detail. "This is very professional documentation," he said quietly, "almost like it was prepared by someone with legal or law enforcement training." "That's what I've been trying to tell you," Jessica said desperately. "She's not what she appears to be." But her father was thinking beyond his daughter's social drama. If Sarah Mitchell had connections to federal agencies, if she was documenting everything with this level of precision, if she was confident enough to walk into a principal's office and essentially threaten legal action, then she had backing that made his local influence irrelevant. "Jessica," he said finally, "I want you to stop this immediately. Whatever game you think you're playing with this girl, it ends now." "But Dad..." "Now, Jessica." His tone brooked no argument. "And I want you to tell your friends to stay away from both Mitchell sisters. Completely away." Thursday morning, the dynamic at Jefferson High School shifted dramatically. Jessica's followers received clear instructions to leave the Mitchell sisters alone. Tyler Morrison was notably absent from school, having been suspended for the physical assault documented in Sarah's complaint. The whispered rumors died away as students realized that whatever was happening was bigger than normal high school drama. Emma noticed the change immediately. "It's like someone flipped a switch," she told Sarah at lunch. "Nobody's bothering us anymore." Sarah nodded, eating her sandwich while observing the cafeteria dynamics. Jessica sat with her usual group, but the energy was different. Subdued, defeated. Friday morning at Jefferson High School felt different from the moment Sarah and Emma walked through the front doors. Students who had been whispering and pointing for weeks now averted their eyes and gave them a wide berth. Word had spread quickly about the federal agents and the private investigator, though details had been twisted and exaggerated through the typical high school rumor mill. Jessica Reynolds stood at her usual spot near the main entrance, but her typical crowd of followers seemed smaller and less confident. When she saw the Mitchell sisters approaching, she took a deep breath and walked directly toward them. "Sarah, Emma," she said formally, her voice carrying none of its usual arrogance. "I wanted to apologize for any misunderstandings we've had since you arrived at our school." Emma looked surprised, but Sarah studied Jessica's face carefully. The apology was genuine, born from fear rather than remorse, but genuine nonetheless. "I hope we can put all of this behind us and start fresh," Jessica continued, very aware that other students were watching and recording the interaction. Sarah nodded slowly. "That sounds like a good idea, Jessica." The formal exchange was brief but significant. Jessica Reynolds, who had never publicly backed down from anyone, had just surrendered completely in front of the entire student body. Her reputation as the untouchable queen bee of Jefferson High was finished. As Jessica walked away, Emma whispered to her sister. She looked scared. "She should be," Sarah replied quietly. "She's lucky the people she hired to investigate us were amateurs. If they'd been more competent, this could have ended very differently for everyone." The day proceeded with an almost surreal normalcy. Students actually spoke to the Mitchell sisters in friendly tones as if the weeks of harassment had never happened. Teachers who had previously seemed indifferent now went out of their way to be helpful. Even Tyler Morrison, who returned from his suspension that day, avoided eye contact and gave them a respectful distance. During lunch, Sarah received a text from an encrypted number. "Local situation contained. Opposition neutralized through diplomatic channels. Asset status secure." Emma had begun making real friends, connecting with students in her advanced chemistry class who appreciated her insights and genuine personality. She was laughing at something Amy Chen had said when she noticed Sarah's expression change subtly. "Everything okay?" Emma asked. "Everything's fine," Sarah replied, deleting the message. "Just Dad checking in." But Sarah's trained instincts were picking up something else. The immediate threat from Jessica had been neutralized, but there was still tension in the environment. She noticed Agent Martinez sitting in a car across the street from the school, part of an ongoing security detail she hadn't been told about. After school, instead of walking straight home, Sarah made a detour to the public library, with Emma following curiously. In the reference section, Sarah found what she was looking for: a computer terminal with a direct line to federal databases that looked like a regular internet connection. To anyone who didn't know better, Sarah logged in using credentials that definitely didn't belong to a high school student and began reviewing incident reports from the past week. What she found confirmed her suspicions. "Sarah, what are you doing?" Emma asked, looking over her sister's shoulder at screens full of official government documents. "Making sure we're really safe," Sarah replied, scrolling through surveillance reports and threat assessments. Jessica's family hired that investigator, but someone hired the investigator. Someone with resources and connections that go beyond local lawyers. The reports painted a concerning picture. David Chen, the private investigator who had approached them, had been working for a shell company with ties to foreign intelligence services. His background check on the Mitchell family hadn't been about high school drama. It had been about identifying and potentially compromising American intelligence assets. "Emma," Sarah said carefully, "I need to ask you something, and I need you to think very carefully before you answer. Has anyone approached you recently? Maybe someone claiming to be a reporter, or a college recruiter, or just a friendly stranger asking casual questions about our family?" Emma frowned, thinking. "Actually, yes. There was a woman at the mall last weekend who said she was doing a survey about military families. She asked about Dad's work and where we lived before. I didn't think much of it at the time." Sarah's blood ran cold. What did you tell her? Nothing, really. Just that Dad worked at the base and we used to live on a ranch. Why? Sarah quickly typed the incident into the system, flagging it as a potential security breach. Within minutes, her phone buzzed with a callback from her handler. "This is Falcon 7, she answered, stepping away from Emma. "Falcon 7, we show a possible compromise of family unit security. Report status immediately. Sister was approached by unknown operative last weekend. Minimal information exchanged, but contact confirmed. Requesting immediate family relocation protocols." There was a pause on the other end. "Negative on relocation at this time. Situation is being managed through alternative channels. However, be advised that threat level has been elevated to code yellow. Enhanced protection protocols are now in effect." Sarah disconnected and returned to Emma, who was reading over her shoulder with growing alarm. "Sarah, those reports, they're talking about us like we're in some kind of spy movie." "Emma, I need you to listen very carefully," Sarah said, closing the computer terminal and gathering her things. "What I'm about to tell you is classified. Information that could get us both in serious trouble. If you share it with anyone, they found a quiet corner of the library where they could talk without being overheard. The reason we moved here wasn't really about Dad's new job," Sarah began. "We were relocated because my mission assignment required us to be in this area. The ranch story's partially true, but it's also cover for why a Delta Force operative's family suddenly appeared in a new town." Emma's eyes widened. "Delta Force? You're actually in Delta Force?" "I'm the youngest operative ever admitted to the program," Sarah confirmed. "The past 4 years of summer camps were actually advanced military training. I've completed missions in countries you've never heard of, using skills that most adults couldn't master in a lifetime. But you're only 17. Age is just a number when you have the right aptitude and training," Sarah said. "The military identified my potential when I was 13, and I've been living a double life ever since. Normal high school student by day, classified government operative by night." Emma struggled to process this information. Her twin sister, who helped her with homework and made pancakes on Saturday mornings, was also a trained killer working for the most elite military unit in the world. So Jessica Reynolds accidentally targeted a Delta Force operative? "She targeted my family," Sarah corrected, which made it personal. "If she had just been bullying me, I would have handled it differently. But the moment she put hands on you, she crossed a line that activated protocols she couldn't possibly understand." Emma was quiet for several minutes, absorbing everything she'd learned. "What happens now? Now we go home, you do your homework, and I make sure the people who are really behind this investigation understand that they picked the wrong family to mess with," Sarah said simply. That evening, while Emma studied for a chemistry test, Sarah slipped out of their apartment using skills that made her invisible to both civilian observation and standard surveillance equipment. She had a meeting that didn't officially exist with people who weren't supposed to be in the country. The meeting took place in an abandoned warehouse on the industrial side of town, the kind of location that appeared in movies but actually was used by intelligence operatives for exactly this purpose. 3 people waited for her in the shadows: Agent Martinez, whom she'd met before, Director Patricia Vance, who turned out to be much more than a substitute teacher, and a third person whose face was obscured, but whose presence radiated the kind of authority that came from the highest levels of government. "Falcon 7, Director Vance began. "We have a problem. The investigation into your family wasn't random harassment by local teenagers. It was a probe by foreign operatives testing our security around classified assets." Sarah nodded. She'd suspected as much from the reports she'd reviewed. Jessica Reynolds and her family were unknowing pawns, the shadowed figure added, speaking for the first time. But their actions gave foreign agents the opening they needed to begin mapping our domestic protection protocols. "What's the mission?" Sarah asked directly. "The mission is to identify and neutralize the foreign cell that's been using local resources to probe American intelligence assets," Director Vance replied. "They're using high school social dynamics as cover for a much more serious operation." Agent Martinez handed Sarah a tablet containing files on suspected foreign operatives who had been identified in the area over the past month. Their operation was sophisticated, using local civilians as unwitting assets while gathering intelligence on military families and government personnel. "Your cover as a normal high school student is perfect," the shadowed figure continued. These operatives won't expect a teenager to be conducting counterintelligence operations against them. Sarah studied the files, memorizing faces and details with the efficiency her training had instilled. Rules of engagement? Full authority, Director Vance said. These people represent a clear and present danger to national security. Use whatever means necessary to protect American intelligence assets and eliminate the foreign threat. Sarah closed the tablet and looked at her handlers. Timeline? 72 hours, the shadowed figure replied. After that, they'll realize their probe was detected and disappear back into the international intelligence underground. Understood, Sarah said. Falcon 7 accepting mission parameters. As she prepared to leave, Director Vance called her back. Sarah, this is beyond anything you've handled before. These aren't training scenarios or controlled missions in foreign territories. These are professional operatives working on American soil, and they won't hesitate to eliminate threats. Sarah smiled that cold, confident smile that had become her trademark. Director, they have no idea what they're dealing with. They think they're playing games with a high school girl. They're about to learn what happens when you threaten a Delta Force operative's family. She disappeared into the night, leaving her handlers with the distinct impression that the foreign cell's 72-hour timeline had just become dangerously optimistic. The foreign intelligence cell had been operating in the city for 3 months, using a legitimate-seeming market research company as their front. They'd identified several military families as potential targets for intelligence gathering, but the Mitchell family had presented the most intriguing puzzle. A logistics coordinator with inexplicably high security clearances, and a daughter who displayed combat training that shouldn't exist in a civilian teenager. Sarah spent Saturday morning doing reconnaissance that looked like normal weekend activities to any observer. She went to the mall, the coffee shop, the bookstore, all locations where the suspected foreign operatives had been spotted according to her intelligence briefing. Her trained eyes cataloged everything: escape routes, surveillance positions, civilian populations that could provide cover or become collateral damage. At the mall, she identified 2 of them immediately. The woman who had approached Emma about the military family survey was sitting at a table in the food court, ostensibly reading a magazine but actually observing everyone who entered and exited. The man at the electronics store had been photographing customers with a hidden camera, building profiles of local residents. Sarah purchased a pretzel and sat where she could observe both operatives while appearing to be a normal teenager, scrolling through her phone. In reality, she was uploading their locations to a secure server and coordinating with surveillance teams positioned around the area. Her phone buzzed, with a message that looked like it came from Emma but actually contained coded instructions from her handlers. Don't forget we have dinner at 7 tonight. Dad says bring dessert. Translation: target location confirmed for 1900 hours. Eliminate with extreme prejudice. Sarah finished her pretzel and began moving through the mall, using reflective surfaces and crowd dynamics to confirm that she wasn't being followed. The foreign operatives had noticed her, but they saw what she wanted them to see: a typical teenage girl spending Saturday at the mall. What they didn't see was Sarah memorizing their positions, identifying their communication methods, and counting the number of exits they would try to use when everything went wrong for them. That afternoon, Sarah returned home to find Emma studying at the kitchen table, completely unaware that her sister had just spent the morning preparing to eliminate foreign spies. How was the mall? Emma asked without looking up from her chemistry textbook. Educational, Sarah replied, which was technically true. She'd learned that the foreign cell was larger than initially suspected, more professional than expected, and armed with weapons that suggested they were prepared for violent confrontation. Sarah made lunch for both of them, a normal domestic activity that helped her process the tactical information she'd gathered. Her training had taught her to compartmentalize, to maintain her cover identity even when planning operations that could result in casualties. Sarah, Emma said suddenly, are you okay? You seem different lately. More, focused? Sarah looked at her sister, this sweet, brilliant girl who deserved to live in a world where teenagers worried about chemistry tests instead of foreign intelligence operations. I'm fine, Emma. Just adjusting to everything that's happened at school. Do you think it's really over? The bullying and everything? Sarah smiled, but her mind was already moving to the evening's mission. Yes, Emma. I think our problems at school are definitely over. At 6:30 that evening, Sarah told Emma she was going to study at the library. Instead, she changed into dark clothing and equipment that transformed her from a high school student into something far more dangerous. Night vision goggles, communication gear, weapons that weren't available to civilian law enforcement, and body armor that could stop rifle rounds. The target location was a warehouse on the outskirts of town, where the foreign operatives had established their real base of operations. Satellite surveillance showed at least 6 individuals inside, all armed and dangerous according to the intelligence briefing. Sarah approached the warehouse using urban camouflage techniques that made her invisible to both human observation and electronic detection. Her team for this mission consisted of 3 other Delta Force operatives who had been positioned in the area for exactly this type of contingency. Falcon 7 in position, she whispered into her communication device. Falcon 2 in position. Falcon 4 in position. Falcon 6 in position. All units. "This is command," came the voice of Director Vance through their encrypted channel. "Targets are confirmed foreign intelligence operatives engaged in espionage against United States military assets. Rules of engagement are weapons-free. Capture if possible, eliminate if necessary. Execute on my mark." Sarah moved toward the warehouse with lethal efficiency, her training taking over completely. This wasn't the quiet country girl who helped her sister with homework. This was a Delta Force operative executing a classified mission to protect national security. The foreign operatives inside the warehouse were professionals, but they weren't prepared for an assault by America's most elite military unit. The operation lasted exactly 8 minutes and resulted in the capture of 2 operatives and the elimination of 4 others who chose to resist rather than surrender. Among the captured intelligence was evidence of a broader network of foreign spies operating throughout the American Midwest, using high school social dynamics and local institutions to gather information on military families and government personnel. "Command, this is Falcon 7, Sarah reported as the warehouse was secured. "Mission complete. Intelligence package recovered confirms multi-state operation targeting classified assets. Outstanding work, Falcon 7. Extract immediately and return to cover identity. This operation never happened." By 9:30, Sarah was back at the apartment, helping Emma with her chemistry homework, as if she'd spent the evening at the library instead of neutralizing a foreign intelligence cell that had threatened national security. "How was studying?" Emma asked, not looking up from her periodic table. "Productive," Sarah replied. "I think I learned everything I needed to know." Monday morning at Jefferson High School brought a sense of normalcy that felt almost surreal after everything that had happened. Jessica Reynolds nodded politely when she saw the Mitchell sisters, her earlier antagonism replaced by a healthy respect for boundaries she didn't fully understand but knew better than to cross. Tyler Morrison had transferred to another school, his reputation never recovering from being defeated by someone half his size. The students who had participated in the harassment campaign now went out of their way to be friendly. Sensing that the social dynamics had permanently shifted, Emma flourished in this new environment. Her natural intelligence and kind personality, attracting genuine friends who appreciated her for who she was rather than judging her for where she came from. She joined the chemistry club and the debate team, finding her place in activities that challenged her mind rather than her ability to navigate social warfare. For Sarah, the success of the mission brought both satisfaction and new challenges. Her handlers were impressed with her performance under real-world conditions, but they were also planning more advanced assignments that would require even greater compartmentalization between her civilian and operational identities. "I still can't believe how much everything changed," Emma said as they walked to school on a crisp October morning. "It's like we're living in a completely different world from when we first arrived." Sarah smiled, watching the familiar routine of students arriving for another day of classes. "Sometimes all it takes is showing people who you really are." "Is that what you did?" "Showed them who you really are?" Sarah considered the question carefully. In a way, that was exactly what she'd done. Jessica Reynolds and her followers had expected to find weakness and vulnerability. Instead, they'd encountered strength, training, and resources that exceeded their ability to comprehend or combat. "I showed them enough," Sarah replied. "Enough to earn respect, enough to ensure your safety, enough to make sure we could both just